All right. Well, Jennifer, thanks for being here. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about the coaching topic for today. And this video is really just a chance to run through some of the concepts we've talked about in the Talent to Strength course. Of course, you've been through that course. And so that, just like with any of these trainings, there's a lot of theories and concepts. So I thought for me, the purpose of this video would be to look at a little application. So I appreciate your generosity for being willing to be a guinea pig and be a coachee. And so I thought we would begin by maybe just having you introduce the topic, and then we'll go into it a little bit. And what I might do is I might stop like at certain points just to kind of point out how I'm applying the concepts, or if you want to stop and kind of do any of that, stepping back and looking at the coaching conversation too, we can do that. We can just do like a freeze frame and then just kind of zoom out, talk about it a little bit. So yeah, I thought it'd be great if you can give a little background of what you do and then how that leads into the topic that you want to focus on today.
Okay. My name's Jennifer Downing, and I am the Executive Director of Leadership South Coast, which is a community leadership program that services Southeastern Massachusetts. And I've been in this position going in 2 years now. So I'm going into my third year. And the position itself requires that in addition to sort of managing the operations and the day-to-day of the program and organization, I'm also responsible for designing and facilitating our monthly sessions and all of our other programs and services that we provide for our graduates. Prior to being in this position, I did something completely different. I worked in philanthropy. I worked for a foundation. So it was really behind the scenes in a program officer role. So this sort of being out front in front of large groups on a regular basis is very new to me. And while I've grown more comfortable and I do enjoy it, I'm still a little not fully at ease when I'm in the facilitation role. But I think that I secretly really love it. So what I'm hoping to get your help with today is how I can become a more effective facilitator, but more at ease, more comfortable in my skin when I'm doing it.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I want to jot that down too, because that whole idea of being more comfortable in your skin in regards to facilitation is going to be pretty relevant here, especially as we talk through that strength thinking model. So real quick, I'm just going to do a screen share, and I thought it'd be good to introduce your top 5 themes. So, maybe we can begin with that. And I just put the document up here to help you talk through it. So yeah, just introduce your top 5 themes for us real quick.
Yeah, so harmony is my first. And I think when you think about facilitation, where I get stuck a lot is I hold myself back for fear of disappointing others or not providing an experience that will be satisfactory for others. My second theme is restorative. I think part of why I love facilitation and really want to get good at it is this idea of trying to help groups figure things out really excites me. My third is responsibility. I'm not thinking of a way that this ties in with facilitation right away, but right now, but definitely I'm a person that follows through. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. That's really important to me. And then competition, which was when I first went through the Strengths Finder, this was one for me that was, I was very surprised to learn that I had competition. I never really thought of myself as competitive. So this is one theme that I'm certainly learning about in myself. And then activator is my number 5, which totally I can relate with. I definitely like to get things going. I like process, but too much process gets me frustrated. I want to hit the gas and get going on things, and sort of we'll figure it out along the way. So yeah, that's my top 5.
Very good. I think that's all going to play an important role in our conversation. And then the other thing I want to put up here real quick, just to kind of frame what we'll be doing, is some of the talent to strength concepts that we've been working with, and how they would be relevant. I think the main thing is this slide here provides a good framework for what we'll be doing. These steps, starting with step 1, looking at the activity, which is facilitation. And, facilitation is broad. There's a lot of things within facilitation. So what we want to do is we want to really kind of get the right scope on the issue. Like, do we need to really, really, really zoom in, or do we want to kind of take a little bit wider view of it? So we want to find that right scope of the activity, because that's what a strength is. A strength is consistent, near perfect performance in facilitation. It's not consistent, near perfect performance in your themes, because these aren't really activities. That's one of the main things. One of the crucial things about StrengthsFinder that I think so many people miss is we're not talking about your themes and perfecting your themes, getting consistent near perfect performance in your themes. It's about the activity, so it'll be facilitation. But the next step is to look at how your themes of talent factor in to facilitation. They're a huge factor. So I'm not diminishing the themes. I'm just trying to help people understand an effective way to go about coaching is to focus on the activity. And then we can look at the knowledge aspect of what's involved with facilitation. And then finally, the skills or the actions that lead to the outcomes. So that's basically the framework in my mind as we're talking about this. Is I want to look at these 4 areas, hopefully in sequence, but sometimes we don't do it in sequence. It's fine. Sometimes in order to find out what the activity is, I might need to talk about what skills you want to work on. Or sometimes we might talk about some themes of talent and then look for examples within some activities. So we might start with talent and then get to activities. But ultimately, we're trying to elevate your performance in those areas or in the activity that we identify. So that's why I want to pull up this one slide here. I'm trying to just move it down to the rest of them, which is where we could go really deep into any one of these 4 areas around isolate the activity, maturate the themes or the talents, aggregate knowledge that might be needed, and cultivate skill. So first step is really, let's talk about the activity itself, which is facilitation. And then what I wrote down is that you want to feel more comfortable in your skin when you facilitate. So that kind of, really narrows down the scope. Does that sound like it's too narrow? Does it sound like it's just right? Are there other aspects of facilitation that are important for you that we might leave out if we're not careful?
Well, I want to be effective at it. I want groups to feel like when I'm facilitating a session, whether that's for my community leadership program or with perhaps something I'll do in the future. I have a desire to get more involved in helping nonprofit and public organizations sort of with their collaborative social change efforts. So I would love to see myself move in that direction where I'm hired to facilitate these processes. So I think with my community leadership program where we work with frameworks that have already been created. I want to feel more comfortable in my skin. I want to be able to deliver that material creatively in a fun way that's effective and clear. People get a lot of value out of it. Then I think in the future, in terms of broadening that scope, making sure that I have the skill sets that I need to help organizations think through that, those complex situations.
Very good. Yeah, no, that's helpful because I don't want to just zoom in on one thing that you said, which was the comfort, at the risk of these other really important things, because now I hear the larger context that you're shooting for. You see facilitation as a very important mode for you to facilitate to move forward your career goals. You want to maybe even become a facilitator as your primary kind of vocation. Is that overstating it?
No.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So I want to keep that frame in mind for moving forward, and so that's great. Talk to me a little bit about what you consider to be a great facilitator or an effective facilitator. Maybe your experience. I know you just went through the process of hiring one, so you were evaluating other facilitators. I'm sure you sat in on a lot of other people's facilitation, which is making me want to ask another question real quick about why. Why does this interest you? What ignited you to want to do this and chart that course?
I think in the short time that I've been in this role, I get little blips of enjoyment when I do it. At this point, it's really mostly anxiety and nervousness around facilitation. But I do have moments where I did something well, or something just worked out very well, and you get that feeling of, wow, that was really fun. I feel like I just had an impact. I feel like the group and I connected, and that's just satisfying, and fun.
Yeah.
So I kind of go with my gut on, wow, that felt good, so something must be right with that. But I think also sort of the broader scale, moving in that career direction, I'm just personally interested in, cross-sector, multi-sector collaborative process. I've been studying it a bit with graduate work. I think it's sort of the wave of the future in terms of social change. So, I'm just very interested in that as well. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah. What I'm interested in too is this idea that the first thing you said about it was that the idea of facilitating raises some nervousness or anxiety, and so it made me curious why you're moving toward that. For if it produces those feelings. But then you also talked about there was that good feeling that happens when you feel that you connect with the participants or that you have an impact. So it's almost like there's two sides to this. There's the nervousness and anxiety, and then there's the satisfaction that comes from it. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that dynamic. Maybe what is the cause of the anxiety? And
well, I think, prior to understanding my themes of talent, prior to the Strengths Finder, I think that I would find that, push and pull a little bit of an annoyance and couldn't really figure that out. Now that I understand my themes, I understand more where that nervousness is coming from. I suspect it's coming from my harmony theme, the fear of disappointing others. I suspect it comes now from my competition theme. I'm really good at what I do. I'm wanting to be remembered for what I do. And also my restorative theme, wanting to fix problems, wanting to figure things out. So I understand where that nervousness is coming from now. So trying to figure out how to navigate that, I think, is a challenge, right?
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. So you pretty much talked about every theme except for responsibility, which is also the theme as you were introducing yourself. You went through and you were like, oh, well, I'm not really sure how that would relate to facilitation.
Right.
But I'm wondering if there's a connection between these. I'm more than wondering. I kind of think there is, where you're carrying this burden. Kind of like in the image. Here you feel this burden for what? Let me just ask you instead of filling in the words. When you facilitate, what do you feel psychologically responsible for?
my group,
Yeah.
those that I'm working with.
Right.
Make sure that they have a valuable experience.
Yes. And I would imagine that that is probably the one that produces the greatest anxiety, maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was harmony, but I think responsibility definitely comes into play. Yeah.
Yeah. See, the harmony theme would definitely come into play if you were facilitating and there was some tension in the room and you sense that there was discord.
Mm-hmm.
So that would produce anxiety in the moment for sure. But, if you're preparing to facilitate ahead of time, there might be some harmony you're looking for in terms of harmony between, what you understand the client needs and then the agenda you're trying to create and trying to find the right activities that would fit well together. But I would imagine that most of the anxiety in advance would come from this sense of responsibility that these people are depending on me. They're going to take a day out of their lives to work through an issue. And if I am not effective, then I could make things worse.
I completely overlooked that. And I think you're totally right.
Or did I now make you even more anxious about facilitating?
No, I just think you just articulated it. Yeah. I mean,
right.
That's exactly what it is. It's yeah.
Okay. So I think that's really interesting. And now just in terms of our process, what I'm doing is I'm sort of merging these first two steps. So let's see, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me do that. So really what we're doing here is we've isolated the activity pretty much. So to my internal satisfaction, I was just like, all right, I think we got the right activity. I should double check and see if you think that we've got the right activity and scope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you do, yes.
So then what I did is I sort of flowed seamlessly, invisibly into the second stage of looking at your themes and how they factor in. And so there's different aspects of this kind of conversation. One is what we just did, which is, are we overlooking an important theme here? Or do we need to kind of look through each of the themes, which is, I think, where we'll get to next, where we'll want to look through at each of the themes to see how they would contribute to the activity of facilitation and how to manage them from detracting from that activity. So that would be all part of this step 2, maturating the themes. And then I'm already mentally flagging in my mind that there's some knowledge pieces that I think would be helpful. And then skills, which are the step-by-step actions of being an effective facilitator that we could talk about as well. But the whole idea, I guess I want to point out too, is that we're trying to move you up this strengths ladder, which probably should be part of this activity discussion too. For example, in terms of facilitation, would you say that you're oblivious to facilitation? Like you didn't even know there was this thing? Would you say that you're aware of it, but you're completely inept? If you were to get up and facilitate, you would not do very well at all. Would you say you're a beginner where you've decided that facilitation is something I want to get good at and I'm willing to seek coaching or some kind of training or development in that? Or would you say that you have some degree of competence where you can perform the basic activities of facilitating, but you haven't really pushed it to the point where you have that where it's a strength, where you have that consistent near perfect performance? Or would you say even mastery? Are you a master facilitator?
Right.
No? Okay.
I would say I'm right in the middle between beginner and competent.
Good. Yeah. So if I were to divide this up a little bit more, I would divide this into minimally competent, competent, and super competent. And you might say, all right, I'm kind of at the minimally competent level.
Right.
If there was such a thing, because I think you're more than a beginner. I mean, you just spent a whole year of facilitating that I know of is the Talent to Positive Leadership curriculum, but I know you've probably done a lot of other facilitation. So I think you're more than a beginner. You're kind of at somewhere in this competent phase, and I might even say, higher than minimally competent, just plain old vanilla competent. But whatever, we're in the ballpark right here.
Yeah.
And then where do you want to get to?
Well, I have competition in my top 5. I want to be a master.
You want to be the master. All right, cool. Really good. Would you settle for strength in the near term?
Yes, I would.
Excellent. Good. Yeah, so getting to that level. And so I just think that, I don't know, what do you think of talking through this ladder? How did it sit with you? Because I know we talked about it in the certification, but now we're actually using it to look at you and in this activity. So was this helpful for you?
It is. I mean, I'm familiar with it. I've seen it before. I do think it's helpful to kind of think through in steps, because I tend to, we don't give ourselves enough credit. I think most people don't give themselves enough credit. They'll say, I'm just horrible at something. And then when you really think about it in these tiers, you realize that, you actually have some experience in things. So I think it's a helpful exercise for sure.
That's such a really, really subtle and important point that you made, is that sometimes in coaching, once you've identified the activity, then you can help the client see a much more generous assessment of where they're at. Because some people, especially some people with a certain theme that you happen to have in your top 5, can be very self-critical. Any guess on which theme I'm talking about?
Competition.
Well, I was thinking that one, but the main culprit is restorative.
Restorative.
Yeah.
I overlooked that again. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of a subtle point about restorative, because restorative is I want to fix things. But the subtle point is that, as we've talked about before, you're always scanning your environment for what could be fixed, what's broke, what's not up to snuff. And the one thing that is consistent in your environment everywhere you go is you. Yes. Yeah. So it's easy for someone with restorative to turn that lens on themselves, especially with that competition theme, where what you're also scanning for in your environment is who else is there, and where are they, and where am I in comparison to them. So yeah, absolutely. The competition and the restorative kind of can supercharge to create that critical view of self. But as we were talking through where you are in the ladder, you're like, oh, well, I'm beginner, probably out of habit. Like, I think probably your honest answer would be, no, I'm competent at facilitating. But maybe I should downgrade myself a little bit, because I'm so aware of my flaws and I'm so aware of other people that might be really higher up this ladder. So that accurate self-assessment, I think, is really important, because nobody else can really do that for us. I mean, there's some situations where somebody, like if I don't know why this is my example, but if you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're really sick. And you're like, am I? How sick am I? They could tell you in comparison to other cases they've seen how sick you are, So you might not be able to accurately assess how you are objectively in certain areas, but you could assess more. We all could assess more accurately of where we are. A coach can help with that. It's hard to really do for ourselves. So here's where you are with facilitation, and you want to move more toward a strength. And so that's when I look when I want to go to this grid here. This was a little bit different version of it. So let's just see how we're doing. We stated the activity as focused as possible, neither too broad or specific. And why it matters. It matters because you see this as a way that you could make a positive difference, especially in regards to this cross-sector collaboration. Check my notes on that. So then I want to look at what is your current level of performance in this activity. And we looked at that. We said you're above beginner and you may be entering the competence zone or maybe even deeper into the competence zone. Then we said, where do you want to get? And you're like, I want to be a master facilitator. Now, that mastery is really, really a high bar. So we'll see if you really mean it. And you might, absolutely. But for sure, we want it to be a strength. So we know at least that you want to be able to consistently, near perfectly facilitate groups toward greater collaboration. We didn't define this fully, but we could. I could ask you, what does that look like? And then what I want to ask is, what's your commitment level? How committed are you to moving in that direction? Because there's a lot of things I want to get good at, but I'm not really committed to that. So then I would ask, what obstacles do you anticipate on this journey to having mastery or at least strength in facilitation?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
So you're asking how committed I am?
I am.
I would say this is pretty high on a commitment level because it's not just a hobby. It's kind of professional career where I'm going. Livelihood, right?
Yep.
I think it's pretty important on the commitment list.
Mm-hmm.
Obstacles, I think just daily life is an obstacle, like trying to balance your full-time work and getting the day-to-day done and managing family balance, and then the time that you need to actually educate yourself and get better at a skill. It's just, I think that's the biggest obstacle is,
Well, I think what's really good, this kind of moves us into the third step, even though we're not quite done with the second step. So, the first step would be, I feel like we've got the isolate activity pretty well down, but even still, when we get into the weeds more, we'll look at more specifically aspects of facilitation. There's the whole pre-facilitation process. Then there's the actual live facilitation, and then the often neglected follow-up from the facilitation, So we could zoom in in any one of those three areas, and then even within those areas, there's a lot of little pieces. We definitely would talk more about how your themes relate to any one of those aspects of facilitation. But then what we're opening up now is this idea of the knowledge piece, because a strength is when you have your talents as mature as possible, and you've aggregated or collected the relevant knowledge and then cultivated skill. So we'll talk about knowledge for now. So there's the book knowledge that you would need to know about facilitation. Have you come across any kind of like bodies of knowledge related to facilitation that you think would be helpful, or that you have found helpful?
Not really. I think that's somewhere where I need to. I think these two next tiers is where I really need to focus.
Good. Right. So most of the time, people think StrengthsFinder coaching would focus all on the talents and the themes, and sometimes that's absolutely true. And sometimes if you're coaching for self-awareness, there's nothing better than the StrengthsFinder, in my opinion. So I'm not downplaying that at all. But what you're highlighting is the truth that a lot of times as StrengthsFinder coaches, it's more than just being able to help people with their themes. There's this other, wings of coaching that really get outside of StrengthsFinder.
Mm-hmm.
even though we're wanting to do is specifically Strengths Finder coaching, where we'll talk about the themes, but what we're really talking about is building a strength, and themes are a part of that, but so is the knowledge and so is the skills. So the answer, I actually have quite a few books on facilitation, because it's just coincidental, like it wasn't planned this way, but I have been facilitating for the last 20 years. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a master at it, and I don't know, I mean, I would say it's a strength. I wouldn't say it's a full strength. So it's a strength.
I've seen you facilitate, and I think it would be, definitely a strength.
Okay, thank you.
You've done it for 20 years.
Yeah, I've done it enough that I've pretty much made all my mistakes on someone else's dime, That's my big pitch for when I want people to hire me, as I say, you should hire me because I already made all my mistakes with other clients that paid for it. Anyway, so there is that content knowledge. And so I remember, for example, when I was in grad school, we took a class on running workshops and, workshop management. And it was little things like how to prepare the tape ahead of time, where you kind of like would already rip up little strips of tape and fold them into a loop. And then I'd put them up, like I have my own whiteboard behind me. So on the side rails of it, I would put my little tape circles, so that, like in the middle of facilitating, you want to hang a flip chart paper up. You're like, oh, hold on, let me grab a roll of tape and let me rip off tape and let me awkwardly do this. And then, but now I would have these pre-made tape rolls ready.
Right.
Little things like that, which kind of gets into the experiential knowledge. Which is, I could read about some of these things, and then you actually do these things. And there's a whole layer of knowledge that only comes from doing it, and so, you've already begun, you're well into facilitating the positive leadership curriculum in your program. Mm-hmm. You have your first year behind you now. We were just talking about this before we got on the call, and so now you're going into your second year using the curriculum. You're way more comfortable because now you have that experiential knowledge. Mm-hmm. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so then what we want to do is look at what knowledge you want to acquire to better improve your facilitation. Mm-hmm. And kind of set up a little study curriculum for you of what would increase your comfort with facilitation. What would you consider to be an important aspect of your facilitation that would have it be a strength for you? Are there certain techniques in facilitation? Is it how to get groups to align better? So are you facilitating kind of the relationships among the people in the room? Or are you trying to do what you're going to be going through, the strategic planning process? Are you trying to move that group toward a conclusion? So, we could study different techniques for group cohesion, or we could study techniques for strategic planning. There's tons of different approaches and philosophies around strategic planning. And then specifically for your audience, nonprofit strategic planning versus or cross-sector strategic planning, right? Like you have people from not just different organizations, but entirely different sectors where the corporate motive of profit is very different from the nonprofit or the faith-based or education-based institutions. All have very different things. So what would your study be? Would it involve books and reading? Would it involve interviewing facilitators? Would it be observing directly, maybe asking to sit in on facilitating with somebody? There's all those pieces. There's when I was really in the beginning of this, I was in an online community of facilitators. Like there's a whole profession of people that this is what they do full time. And it was amazing, all the different techniques that they would share and activities. And so to be around other people, would be part of your study. Deliberately place yourself amid a community of other people. There's a book called The Talent Code, which would call this a hotbed of talent. So there's certain collectives where people get together, whether it's the kids at the skateboard park. They're creating a hotbed of talent where they're learning tricks from each other and critiquing each other, to, sport camps that kids go to, or, whatever. So finding that hotbed of talent for you would also be part of your knowledge. And then, of course, it's the application of how you will use the knowledge and not forgetting the knowledge that you have. So do you have a, you said one of the challenges might be, there's so many things in life going on. So developing in this one area could get lost. Developing in this one area of facilitation can get lost in running your current nonprofit, your role, your family role. So could we carve out a little place where facilitation related resources are gathered? Could you have your notebook where everything related to facilitation goes? Or if you use something like Evernote, a file where you collect information just for facilitation. So I'll stop there and see what you thought of any of that related to the knowledge piece.
Well, I think they're all great suggestions, and I like this idea of, like, can you carve out a little piece? Because I can't expect myself to just consume myself in this one area. I don't have, if you look at the pie of your life, I just can't do that. So when you break it down to smaller chunks, and maybe take it in phases, that's easier to swallow and absorb. So figuring out what I start with, I think is important. Like, how do I fill that little piece of the pie in this knowledge tier? And maybe it's doing a little reading, and maybe it's, I don't know. But I think that's what I need to figure out.
And doesn't that kind of also put things in perspective a little bit? Like I'm like, I'm going to start working out and I'm going to become an Adonis. Like we set these high expectations for ourselves. So you said you wanted to develop facilitation into a strength. You did not say, I want to obsessively, doggedly pursue at all costs this, world-class dominance in the realm of facilitation. Although your competition may have felt that way,
Yeah.
But now we're right-sizing it a little bit and actually setting up some realistic expectations up front to say, okay, I don't want a steep ascent up the mountain. I think I want a more of a, kind of steady progress that's more manageable and realistic.
Definitely.
Cool. So then, the skill part, I don't think we're quite there yet in looking at what are the active, actual skills that would be involved in facilitation. But just as a little, precursor, when we do get to this conversation, I would want to map out all the steps of what effective facilitation would include. Like, imagine if we built, I guess I'm not showing my screen. I'm talking about it, but not sharing it. So, so here, I would want to map out all the skills. Like we could start by saying, all right, there's the beginning, there's the pre-facilitation stuff. What's all involved with pre-facilitation? Let's just brainstorm. Not right now. Let's just brainstorm a list of all the aspects. Maybe in your little notebook or journal for facilitating, you would keep notes on what are all the pieces of that would help me be more effective at the pre-facilitation stage. What questions do I need to ask the client? Who is the client? That's really key, because you might be talking to the person who's engaging you, but the client is going to be every single person in the room. So then, when does it make sense for you to pre-interview, or talk with each person before the facilitation? Because there's some things, especially when I'm dealing with like very touchy interpersonal things, like one of my first facilitation projects was a group of neurosurgeons who owned a practice together. So I was like 26, 27 years old. And my first client is this group of highly trained surgeons. I'm sitting there worried about how much I could charge them without charging too much.
Yeah.
And the truth is that wasn't the expensive part of the engagement. The expensive part of the engagement was I was asking these 5 people who probably made $30,000 to $50,000 to $100,000 a day
Yeah.
to sit in a hotel room to talk about their business relationship. So do I just talk to the one person, the one neurosurgeon who invited me to do this project? I actually spent equal time with each one of them ahead of time. So just that would be an example of the pre-facilitation kind of stuff. And then let's map out the steps of the actual facilitation itself, which by definition is really, really hard, because when you're facilitating, it's not like training. Training, you control the content and pretty much the agenda. But in facilitating, it's way more complicated, because you're trying to meet a goal, but anybody could say anything at any time that would totally take the process in a different direction. Mm-hmm. So, but still, during the facilitation, and then let's map out the steps of the post-facilitation. And then what we would do is we would look at, based on all those specific executables, let's assess your performance in each step. You'd be like, oh, I never do that. And then I'd ask, would doing that lend to your overall performance? And you'd be like, yeah, if I improve that element of my game, it would be way better. If I were to, if the activity we wanted to get better at was hitting a baseball, I'm a baseball player and I want to get better at batting, then I could say, well, I'm really good in my stance and I'm really good at picking up the release of the pitch, but I'm not so good at, some aspect of my swing. And I'd say, well, if you got better at that aspect of your swing, would you have a higher overall percentage of batting percentage, or whatever it's, I don't even know what it's called, but whatever. We would look for those high yield kind of places, which is the next step for where we would focus your skill development. And then you only get better when you practice the skills. Just knowing, oh, I need to get better at that, doesn't let us off the hook. So if we really want to improve performance, then we would practice those steps that you've prioritized. Mm-hmm. And I want to say this because I'm talking more than I would normally want to talk, but in a coaching session. So let me work this in, and then anything you want to say or wherever you want to go with this. Okay. So all of these steps, these 4 steps of isolating the activity, maturing the talent, aggregating knowledge, and cultivating skills, all of this is about increasing performance. Having what kind of performance? Consistent and near perfect performance in a given domain or given activity. So I can increase my performance by getting more clear on what the activity is, working on the right activity, which is why it's the very first step in the strength thinking process, or the talent to strength process, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Or maybe we're really clear on the activity and we could really improve performance by looking at your top 5 themes or top 10 themes, or managing your bottom 5 themes better, or utilizing themes from other people to increase your performance. Like if we used your responsibility theme and harnessed that more, would that increase your performance? Or if we lessened the anxiety that your responsibility theme might create in you, could that help you relax more? And when you're relaxed, maybe you might be more creative and less focused on yourself and more focused on the client, so you can deliver more value. Or is it a knowledge piece? Could we increase your overall performance by giving you certain knowledge tools that you uncover that really just make a huge difference in your facilitation? This is where like learner and input, and especially the input theme, would be valuable, because there's a lot you could read about facilitation, but input would always be thinking, what's the most useful? So maybe talking to experts who've already tried different techniques and got, maybe they spent thousands of dollars to get certified in one approach, and they're like, I never use it. Or the one valuable thing that really made it worthwhile was this one piece. So let me save you thousands of dollars and a lot of time, And so you could really get that valuable knowledge to increase your overall performance, your consistent, near perfect delivery of facilitation. And then finally, what we just talked about, the skills. We could say, Jennifer, you are really, really good at these pieces. And this piece here, you're not as good at. Now, of course, StrengthsFinder would say, focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. But if you were to invest a little bit more in this activity and just bump it up a little bit, or at least not make so many mistakes in this one area, would that improve your performance? So that would be worth the investment of time and energy to get good at. Or we might say, no, it won't matter. It's not worth focusing on. But any one of those four areas here are what could be used to increase your performance as a facilitator, which is what we mean by a strength. So I just want to make that point clear, that this is all about performance and different intervention points.
Right.
What do you think?
I feel like I'm in the bottom left-hand corner between talent and knowledge.
Okay.
Because something you said resonated with me, and I think balancing with the responsibility theme, quieting the focus on self would be helpful for me, so that I can focus on more the client, being creative, and then also building up some of that knowledge. So I kind of see myself in, not that you asked, but I kind of see myself in that little, left corner.
That's perfect. I mean, like, just one little takeaway here could be, if you could, because this focus on self is, I mean, it's really common. You're somebody who wants to do a quality job. Of course you're going to focus on yourself. I do this too, and I fall into this trap, and I put so much pressure on myself that it becomes very inward focused, very self-absorbed is for me how it works. And that energy would be way better spent on the client or the issue or the preparation. So what if there was a way to catch that focus on yourself and determine how healthy is it, So what I'm saying is, like, if you were to build a checklist of preparation for facilitating, that would be on your checklist. Like, let me spend 3 minutes answering these 3 questions. What am I afraid of? What am I obligated to deliver? What's within my control and what's not within my control? Or one thing that's really helped me was this model about the 3 obligations of an interventionist. Have I talked to you about this before? I think we did.
I think so.
Yeah, because we talked about strength interventionist. There's that one call.
Yes, now I remember. I do remember.
Do you remember any of the 3?
Well, I remember you going through it.
Okay, fair enough.
You feel free to go over it again.
Sure. While you're writing, I know you could do it, but I'll just do it once so you can write. The first one is, you want to offer accurate and relevant data, right? That's your job. And as a facilitator, it's to say, hey, here's what I'm hearing from the group. Here's the issues that are going to get in the way of you getting there. So when I do my interviews, like with the neurosurgeons, I would interview each person and realize that it was like 5 different angles on the same thing, with just different things left out or different things included depending on the person. So I call it building a composite view, is just mentally what I refer to it as, where I'm like, I want to build a composite view of all the participants' viewpoints. I want to merge all their perspectives together. And it's very hard to do that, so I don't expect perfection when I do it. But what I want to do is I want to make sure I identify the essential issues that are in the room.
It's funny because I'm going to be sending an email out to my next class, which is starting in January, sort of outlining what's to come and giving them a few assignments. And I had considered, which is something I had never done before, asking them what they wanted out of the retreat. Yeah, I've always thought of it's my responsibility to put together this agenda and to figure it out. And you've just convinced me to do that. So I'm going to ask that question.
That's great.
It's really simple, but and I think the reason I have not asked that question is fear for not being able to deliver upon what they're asking for. So what if they come back and ask for something I can't provide?
Yeah. Well, we'll answer that question. What if that happens?
I don't know.
Well, do you have kids? I don't even know that. Do you have kids?
Yes, I have 2.
Oh, what do you do when your kids ask you for something that's just totally unreasonable?
No.
Wait, I do not know this word. Can you say that word again?
No, I'm sorry. I cannot do that for you.
Yeah, you can, just because you ask them doesn't mean you're promising them. What would you like for Christmas? Oh, well, I want a Ferrari. Okay, what? But are there other things you might want too? And be like, all right, well, you can't have the Ferrari, but you can have this. So I didn't. But you asked, Mom. You asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I told you. So that is a binding contract.
Right.
And it'd be like, well, no, son, don't go to law school, or daughter, don't go to. You don't understand contracts. But yeah. So you see, asking is not promising, but it will increase your ability to deliver.
Yeah. Right.
And you would get ideas that you wouldn't have even thought of before.
Right.
You want to hit the mark, right?
Yes, I do.
So you have to know what the mark is.
That's right.
But I totally relate to this idea of, well, I don't want to ask, like, let me just put my mind reader cap on. But you can see how this shift in thinking for you would be an area to elevate your performance in facilitating. Mm-hmm. So I think that'd be a very individualized thing. Probably not uncommon either, but somebody else, they might need a shift in thinking around this or that. But for you, and this is why coaching is great, because it's individualized, custom tailored for you. But yeah, that burden on yourself, that responsibility theme here again on yourself. And so I also, there's a principle I also want to maybe introduce from Ron Heifetz, who in his book Leadership Without Easy Answers. It's in a lot of his work, where he talks about the leader just feels the burden on their own shoulders, but really an effective leader will shift the weight of the burden onto the community. Mm-hmm. And the community will want to shift the burden back onto the leader. So it'll be like a negotiation. But you, as a trainer, you have more control over the outcomes. As a facilitator, you have way less control over the outcomes. So the focus for a facilitator is to create the conditions that would lead to an effective facilitation. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that effective facilitation would occur. You could just reduce the the threats and create the most conducive environment. So anyway, the first is provide accurate and relevant information. Mm-hmm. And so that the pre-facilitation stage will allow you to do that more. Mm-hmm. The second is to offer free and informed choices to your client. So you could say to the client or your class coming up, you could say, all right, during this time segment, I've scheduled that we could do two things because half of you said you wanted this and half of you said you wanted that. So what would you like to do with this time? Mm-hmm. You know, maybe just trying to come with an example. And then the third thing is inspire commitment to the choices that they made, that the client made.
Yeah. Say a little bit more about that.
Yeah. See, for me, the biggest thing, and even around coaching, what sort of makes me do less coaching than I normally would is the realization that if the client has an insight, but they don't follow through, I feel like a disappointment. I feel like it's my fault or even if it's not my fault, I know it's not my fault. I think the client is going to reduce the value of the experience, even though it wasn't my fault or even wasn't under my control. But when I realized that I'm not responsible for the client taking actions or not, I'm committed to it. I'm psychologically invested in them doing it, but ultimately it's their responsibility.
Right.
And all I could do is try to inspire commitment to that responsibility. Like my trainer now is trying to get me to work out and I'm ignoring her messages, you know, and I shouldn't do that, but it's, you know, I'm not mad at her. She's doing exactly her job, but I might be making her feel guilty or something but all she could do is inspire me to do what I committed to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I mean, I experienced that in this last class. We have a community project that we do as part of our curriculum, part of the class. We had a few groups that were having some issues and having just a bad experience with it. And I, of course, took their bad experience on as my issue, my responsibility to figure out. But there was really nothing I could do. It was really their experience. And so I had to remind myself that my job is just to continue to remind them that this is an opportunity for them to demonstrate their leadership, and they can take the opportunity or they can not take the opportunity. I mean, the way that our action projects are designed, they're intended to be team projects, pretty independent projects. Mm-hmm. So they're not meant for me to do the work. They're not meant for me to manage the work or to tell them what to do. And so, but it was hard for me to not get invested in their disappointment and, mm-hmm. to take that on as my issue and my problem.
Right.
So anyway, that's a good point.
Yeah. And it's a good practice too. And to see that challenge as not for you to fix, but as part of their developmental journey. Mm-hmm. But then to at least let people know that that's part of the value of the program too, is, hey, this program isn't called Leadership, Everything's going to work out exactly the way you want it. It's called, you know what I mean? Let's call this program Leadership. This is a microcosm of the world, and how you respond within the microcosm says a lot about how you respond in the larger world. So what can you learn from it here where the stakes are low? It's a long title for a leadership program, but it's pretty accurate.
Right. No, that's, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought maybe, this would be a good place to pause, maybe reflect on the overall call real quick, the overall session, because what I would see is this would be maybe like the first conversation in a series of coaching conversations, because sometimes coaching happens within one conversation. Sometimes it happens over a serial or episodic kind of relationship with like weekly sessions. And sometimes it's something that happens over a much longer period. Sometimes coaching happens in the context of a relationship that isn't even a professional coaching relationship. I mean, we just need to really understand that there's no set definition for coaching, but that there is an approach to it, and that with StrengthsFinder in particular, I find that it adds a whole dimension, a valuable dimension, maybe even a necessary one, that wasn't available to coaches before. It wasn't available to me before, but I just didn't know it. I wasn't certified in StrengthsFinder. I didn't invest as much time in it. But now that it is, now that I have, I just can't imagine how I would have coached without really having the benefit of the themes. But then just a caution on the other side is for people that think, oh, it's all about StrengthsFinder, and that's the whole, kind of scope and frame that I'm going to coach around. That's also not true. It's asking too much from the StrengthsFinder tool.
Right.
But what I'm trying to do with Talent to Strength is blend those two worlds, the world of coaching and the principles that existed independent of StrengthsFinder, and then with the StrengthsFinder knowledge. And I just think we get a way, way better tool to engage in the coaching process. I hope that came out a little bit in this call, or in this exchange. But I'm just wondering, kind of your thoughts on what, just anything, any reflections on this, what you were expecting versus where we ended up, what you found useful, or what from the class that we talked about conceptually that might have taken place now. So really, there's just all kinds of questions you can answer, and you can answer.
Well, I agree. I think that I'm not a coach, but I can see how having the StrengthsFinder knowledge going into a coaching session just gets you maybe 10 sessions further, right? It's like getting you into that person's being, right? Mm-hmm. And having those, I think I would say it would catapult your progress. But this coaching session today helped me understand my themes a little bit better and how they're playing into some of the challenges I'm experiencing with facilitation. So at least I feel like I have a better handle on it now. I have a pulse of what's going on. And I agree that I think if I was going to really try to figure out a plan for the knowledge piece and the skill building piece, probably having another coaching session or two to help me sort of think through what a reasonable work plan or action plan would be helpful.
Good. Mm-hmm.
But I think I realize now the direction I need to go in.
Which is what? Do you have?
Helpful. Yeah. I think it's building some knowledge, doing a little research, reading up on it more, but I think also having a little bit more compassion and understanding of how my themes are coming into play in this, and just trying to figure out tools to keep them at bay.
Excellent.
Will be helpful. And that's where I'm sitting with it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, one of the most valuable things about themes is not how to maximize them or how to, magically transform them. It's just how to learning how to shut them up at certain times when they're not helpful.
Sort of analogy, dialing your themes down.
That's right.
And I think in this particular case, it's more of the dialing the themes back.
Yeah.
Instead of
turning them up more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that of course is part of what we talked about is the coin model. So maturing a theme, that's step 2, maturing our talents. That is the coin model. That is the first connecting to your themes. And it sounds like, there's some more connecting that could happen with your, responsibility theme. Then maybe next time, you kind of focus on one theme and you forget about one. It's kind of like your children. You focus on one of them and you forgot about the other one. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe not. Maybe that's how it happens. I'm not a parent. So, but there's that, constantly, we don't master our themes. We constantly have to really, be mindful of them, and we're never really done with that process. So it's connecting with them, and then it's observing them. And actually, when you can catch yourself in the moment going, wait a minute, I'm feeling so responsible, it's stressing me out in my preparation, it's the night before and I can't sleep. Wait a minute, I did my responsibility, I did a good job preparing. I'm stressing about the things that aren't my responsibility, which is, will the participants hold up their end of the bargain?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not going to find out till tomorrow. So either I'm going to be tomorrow tired or be tomorrow rested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's learning to interrupt. But when you can observe the theme, then you can learn to interrupt it, talk it down off the ledge, and then, but maybe you say, you know what, I don't want to abandon responsibility. Maybe I could, just turn it down a little bit. I don't need to, have it on so high.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be cool. I think what I want to do is I want to make like a little, that little diagram with your themes, or really anybody's themes, and make like a wood version of this, and like have dials on it, like where you put a dial underneath each theme, and you can physically like click 0 through 10, and you can be like, wait a minute, this is on a 9, this needs to be down to like a 3. Like you can physically dial it down.
That'd be helpful.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be.
So we'll work on that for next time. But good. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the call here because I know we're at about our time. But I really just appreciate this, talking about it, using your example, a real world situation that I know is accurate. I know that you're striving for, and your authenticity in engaging this conversation. I just really appreciate it. So yeah, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to go through the process. So thank you.
Win-win. All right.